Yes. Okay, so today's topic, we need to be fast. So we have around, like, let's say 2 hours 50 minutes in hand. And one is inflation. So last year there was a simple question asking about CPI, WPI, etc. Very simple question. Okay, so last year the weightage of food in CPI is more than weightage of food in WPI. This was the question. And then second option was something like second statement was CPI covers services and which WPI does not. And third statement was something like, RBI uses WPI for policy making. That is a wrong statement. So such a kind of question, like easy question that was asked last year. So once you know CPI, WPI and their ratios, weightages, which one has maximum weightage and which in CPI, WPI. So such kind of questions are already asked. Okay. So let's try to understand these things. And another area is national income. So in national income, simple questions on national income will be asked. Okay, so around 55 questions we have to solve today. And then some concepts, we have slides related to inflation. National income, I'll not derive the formulas in this class unless and until you have a doubt. Suppose you have a doubt with respect to a particular formula, or income method, expenditure method, we have a doubt, then only I will derive. Otherwise, we will not derive formulas, we will straight away get into the concept and discussion. So that is what we have to do. Okay, so let's go to the first question and then I'll get to the slide. Okay, so go to the first question, try answering the first question. And the first question, we can also learn something called as the Fisher effect. Okay, so go to the first question. So first of all, what is nominal interest rate and what is real interest rate? So that is something which we need to understand. Okay, so here three concepts which you'll understand is, always remember, whenever there is inflation in the economy, okay, so inflation goes negative for debtors, inflation goes negative for creditors or the bondholders. Please remember this. Unless and until the inflation is linked to the interest rates. Okay, so that is one. Second important aspect is, whenever we are talking about inflation, okay, so if you want to handle that risk, one is, there were earlier RBI issued some bonds called as inflation index bonds, where the interest rate on the bond was linked to inflation. Interest rate was linked to inflation. So then it is okay. Okay, so as the inflation is increasing, interest rate also is increasing. Okay, suppose there is a person X and there is person Y. Okay, so X has lent some money to Y, 100 rupees to Y. Okay, and at an interest rate of, let's say, 10%. Okay, so 10% is the interest rate. So that means X is expecting a profit of 10 rupees. Okay, so 10 rupees is the interest. Now, when the inflation rate in the economy is also 10%, is it that X is really going to benefit here? Okay, so in reality, now here if we see the nominal interest rate in this case is 10%, This 10% is the nominal interest rate, okay, and therefore he is getting 10 rupees. Now in the market, okay, interest rate is 10, inflation rate, this is inflation rate is also 10%, okay. So ultimately X is not getting anything, the benefit for X is 0. Now for suppose inflation rate is 10%, okay, and in the economy, that is in the economy, inflation rate is 10%, interest rate, okay, and X wants to get a profit of 5%, X was expecting a margin of 5%, then obviously what should he do? He should increase the nominal interest rate from 10% to 15%. Why he should increase it to from 10 to 15? Because in the economy, interest rate, okay, interest rate is 10, inflation rate here, inflation rate is also 10%. So if he wants 5% return, X wants 5% return, that means he has to increase the nominal interest rate to 15%. If the nominal interest rate becomes 15%, then only X will get a return of 5% here. Okay, X will get a return of 5%. Okay, so I think everybody is able to get this. So now that means what is the understanding? Understanding is very simple. The real interest rate which X is getting, okay, is equal to nothing but the nominal interest rate in this case, that is 15%, okay, which I am charging, minus the inflation rate in the economy. Inflation rate. So inflation rate is how much? 10%. Okay, so the real interest rate which X is going to get is nothing but nominal interest rate minus the inflation rate. Now if it is with only X and Y, it's okay, but everybody wants this return. Everybody wants this return. Okay, so what is happening here? For example, in the economy, if inflation rate is increasing, so everybody will be thinking like, oh, I need to make profit. So automatically what they will try to do, so since inflation rate in the economy is increasing, group of people now, forget about X and Y. So group of people are there. Now they want some return. Now in the economy, if inflation rates are continuously increasing, then what will happen? They will try to increase the nominal interest rates. So that means when the inflation rate in the economy is increasing, in tandem with the inflation rate, nominal interest rates also tend to increase. Okay, this is called as the Fisher effect. This is called as the Fisher effect. Fisher effect means as the inflation rates are increasing in the economy, in tandem with the inflation rate, nominal interest rates also tend to increase. Reason being very simple, unless and until nominal interest rates are not increased, everybody is going to increase it. Okay, group, they are going to increase the nominal interest rates. Only then they will be able to get the return. That 5% return they want means this nominal interest rate should increase. So this is what is Fisher effect. Fisher effect. So when we are putting money in the bank also, we should see to that our real interest rates are the criteria rather than the nominal interest rate. Okay. So I think this is clear. Now if this is clear, then so nominal interest rates will exceed real interest rates when the inflation rate is a positive number. Okay. So yes, if inflation rate is positive, okay, so nominal interest rate will be equal to real interest rate minus inflation, or it will be real interest rate plus inflation. If you put nominal interest rate here, it will become real interest rate plus inflation. Okay, so obviously if this inflation rate is a positive number, then you will have nominal interest rate is equal to real interest rate plus inflation rate. Okay, so therefore that means nominal interest rate will exceed the real interest rate when the inflation rate is a positive number. So this is a right statement, no issues there. Okay. Now nominal interest rates refers to the interest rate before taking, you're not taking inflation into account. Okay, so 15%, 20%. So once you take inflation into account, okay, so you arrive at something like the real interest rate. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, now talking about measuring inflation. Okay, so measuring inflation. So there are different indices which you use for inflation. Okay, so how do we measure inflation? We know. So when we are measuring inflation, I'll be very fast here. Okay, so we try to measure inflation in this way. So we have different indexes. Okay, so when we are measuring inflation, so we have current period index. Okay, so we have current period index. Okay, okay, so then we have the last period, that is the base year, last period index. Okay, so into 100, this is what we do. Okay, so what we do is, how do you get that difference? It's basically, so when we are constructing an index, I think current period index minus the last period index divided by the last period index. Last period index means I'm talking about the base year. Base year, what is the rate? So suppose this is current period, it is 160. Okay, base year, the price was 150. Then by 150 into 100. This is how we calculate inflation. This is how we calculate inflation. Okay, so I hope you are able to follow. Okay, so it will be something like 160 10 by 150 into 100. Okay, that would be the inflation rate. Okay, so we are using base year to calculate the index number. Base year is we are using to calculate the index number. This is one way of measuring inflation. So don't worry, they are not going to ask you this. Okay, so this is one way of measuring inflation. Then we have these indexes. What are the different indexes we have? So one is we have the wholesale price index, and another one is we have the consumer price index. Wholesale price index, and then we have the consumer price index, most important. Okay, in that again we have in CPI, we have CPI industrial workers. Okay, so we have CPI agricultural laborers, then we have CPI rural laborers. Okay, and then we have CPI urban non-manual employees. CPI urban non-manual employees. Okay, so here probably they may not ask you a question on each one of these like weightages, but one thing we should know is, first of all, you should know the differences between CPI urban and CPI, CPI and WPI. So first thing is you knowing the difference. So first of all, this index called WPI is given by Ministry of Commerce and Industry, something which you should be knowing. Okay, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And in this WPI index, wholesale price index, we have only goods. Services are not taken into consideration when they are calculating. So services are not part of WPI index. It is only goods. Okay. So when we have to understand, like in WPI, how the weightages are divided. So maximum weightage in WPI index is given to manufacturing. Around 64.2% weightage is given to manufacturing in WPI index. Okay. So when we talk about this WPI index, when we divide this index, you have primary articles, we have fuel and power, you have manufacturing goods, if you see here. Okay, so in this manufacturing also you can have food products. Okay, and in the primary articles also you have food. For example, when we talk about wheat, wheat will come under primary article, but wheat biscuits can come under manufacturing goods. Are you able to get my point? So therefore, if you see in the WPI index, I have primary articles, fuel and power, and I have manufactured goods. So in this, if you see the weightages, okay, PPI is producer price index. Okay, don't worry much about producer price index because in India we are not using it because we don't have the data available. Okay, so manufactured goods we have 64.2%. Maximum weightage is given to manufactured goods here, 64.2%. Okay, then primary articles we have 22.6. So in this we have food articles and non-food articles. Okay, so you have minerals and crude petrol. Okay, then here fuel and power, if we see, okay, we have around 13% weightage, 13% weightage, and manufactured goods maximum weightage 64.2. So you can observe this. Okay, so here if you see, food basically, if you see, total food is around 24%. From the primary, it is around 15.26 food items primary. And from the manufacturing, you have 9%, around 9% food items in the manufacturing. So around 24% is the weightage for food. But in CPI index, the weightage for food is around 45. Okay. So in WPI index, okay, the base year which we take for calculation is 2011-12, and there are only goods. We take around 697 goods. 697 goods. Okay. I hope till here things are clear. 697 goods. Okay. Okay. So coming to CPI or the consumer price index. So for policy making currently RBI is using CPI combined, that is CPI urban plus CPI rural. Okay, in the CPI combined you have goods and services, not just goods alone. Okay, so you have 448 rural, 460 urban. Okay, 448 rural, 460 urban. So you have both goods as well as services. Okay, when you're talking about CPI combined, okay, you have Ministry of Statistics, that is a central statistical organization, that is CSO, that is going to give the index. Okay, and here CPI index is calculated on a monthly basis. CPI index is calculated on a monthly basis. CPI index. In WPI, we calculate primary and fuel and power on a weekly basis. Primary and fuel and power, the data is calculated on a weekly basis in WPI, and the rest is calculated on a monthly basis. Rest is calculated on a monthly basis. So base year for CPI 2012, base year per WPI 11-12. Okay, here we are taking how many goods? 697 goods. 697 goods. No confusion here. So this is about WPI and CPI, basic difference. Last year, since there was a question, I don't think again a straightforward question they are going to ask with respect to CPI and WPI. Okay, so now when we talk about CPI, so you have in CPI, we have industrial workers, okay, which is given by Labor Bureau. So recently in news is the CPI industrial workers, the base year has been changed to 2016. So that is something which you should be knowing. That is not for CPI combined, that is for CPI industrial workers. The base year is 2016. This is CPI industrial workers is given by Labor Bureau. Okay, and then you have CPI agriculture labor here, that is also given by Labor Bureau 1986-1997. Okay, so then you have CPI urban non-manual employees. Now the CPI urban non-manual employees only got converted into CPI combined. So the CPI combined, which RBI is using for its policy making. So this CPI combined, now we are CPI combined, the base year is going to be 2012. So this change in base year to 2016 is mainly with respect to CPI industrial worker. Okay, fine. So now in CPI, if we see, we have maximum weightage is given to food and beverages, 45%. Okay, so housing inflation is not there in CPI rural. Housing inflation is not there in rural, it is there in only CPI urban. So housing around 10.07, around 10.07 weightage. This is last year question from here. Okay, so food weightage is more in CPI, and then fuel you have 6.84, fuel 6.84. Okay, and okay, so I think things are clear. So here if you see, okay, so here if you see, fuel and power weightage is 13% in WPI. Fuel weightage is around 6.84 in CPI. So that is something which you will observe. Okay, maximum weightage here is given to in WPI, maximum weightage is given to manufacturing here in CPI. So this is one thing which you'll remember, and base year change. So these are the things which you have to compulsorily remember as far as the new changes are concerned. Okay, fine. Let's go to second question. Answer for the second question, please. Obviously, you know this is wrong, 697, and this is wrong, commerce. Okay, so simple question. Okay, hope it is clear. No tension till there, right? Okay, so now before I do the next question, so always remember, out of inflation is there. Okay, so inflation is there, we have disinflation. Okay, we have deflation. Okay, we have reflation. These are all different words which you should be knowing. Okay, and out of all this, we have also skewflation. We have skewflation. So skewflation is also there. Okay, so one more word where there can be a question. Okay, so that is skewflation. Okay, so if I have to draw a graph, basically. Okay, so if I'm putting a graph, here. Okay, different months basically. This is different months. I'm not doing it in detail. Okay, so different months. Okay, so now this is the 0 point. Okay, so if I'm drawing a graph here, simple way to understand, okay, simple way to understand. Now this is deflation, fall in prices. Now this is reflation, you're moving up, this is reflation, this is inflation, okay, this is disinflation. Disinflation is basically you have fall in prices, okay, you have fall in inflation rate, though it is positive, there is fall in the rate of inflation above zero, okay, fall in inflation rate, disinflation. Again this will be again deflation, this will be again deflation. Easy way to remember, okay. So there should be okay, stagflation, you know what is stagflation, right? Okay, so stagflation is nothing but inflation associated with the problem of unemployment, very dangerous. UPSC already asked one question, inflation is associated with, growth is associated with, economic growth is always associated with inflation. Okay, so that was a simple question which they asked. Okay, stagflation is very dangerous because you have inflation, and along with inflation, you have something like unemployment problem. Okay, so inflation, this is inflation, reflation. After the deflationary effect, now your prices are increasing. Now this is reflation. Now above zero, the price inflation. Now this inflation, fall in inflation rate. There is price increase is there, but the percentage increase is less. Okay, so that is basically fall in inflation rate, disinflation. This is fall in prices, that is deflation. So no confusion there. Okay, skewflation is basically difficult to handle because of certain goods, the inflation is going to increase. For example, because of onions and because of potatoes, their prices are increasing. Uniformly, all prices are not increasing. It is increase in price is not with respect to many commodities. Only few minor commodities are driving the inflation up. For example, onion prices are increasing, potato prices are increasing. They are driving the inflation up. That is what is called as skewflation. So with respect to this one curve which you should be knowing, which should be the Phillips curve, okay, with respect to this topic, and yesterday also I used this word, the Phillips curve. So Phillips curve should be, the graph should be something like this. So the Phillips curve looks like this. If I take rate of unemployment here, okay, rate of unemployment here and rate of inflation. So there is inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. Inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment, rate of unemployment, inverse relationship. That is what is Phillips curve. So no confusion there. Phillips curve, I think everybody should be knowing. So I think you know deflation, inflation, disinflation, reflation. So these words, stagflation, etc. Okay. Now once this is clear, I think you can solve that question first. Solve the question. What happened? My voice is clear? Question is visible? No. Okay. Sorry. Okay, fine, good. No tension there. No tension there, right? Good. Okay, now go to next question. Skewflation is basically certain commodities will have an impact. Certain commodities will have an impact. Okay, so there is inflation in some commodities, but there can be deflation in other commodities, but it has an impact on overall inflation. Okay, so therefore policy making becomes a little difficult because few commodities are going to drive. Purna, AC tagginchu 26. Okay, so few commodities are going to drive the inflation. Okay, so that is what is skewflation. So there can be a question, a term there. Now next question. Okay, so next question is basically you should be knowing. I'm not going to draw all the graphs now, so I'll show you because we don't have much time. Okay, so when we are talking about regular law of demand, by taking price and quantity demanded, my regular law of demand should look like this. Okay, as the price is increasing, okay, quantity demanded will decrease. This is the regular law of demand. But to the regular law of demand, there are certain exceptions. Okay, there are certain exceptions. Now, the regular law of demand, if I'm taking the regular law of demand, if I'm taking income on y-axis and quantity demanded on x-axis, this is my graph. The graph, this is also regular law of demand. Okay, if I'm taking income and quantity demanded, okay, my graph is going to look like this. Okay, income is increasing, quantity demanded is also increasing. Okay, but there is an exception here. Okay, so exception will be something like here. Of course, here exception is, one exception here is Giffen goods. So this, don't look into this. Giffen goods. Okay, so Giffen's paradox talks about an exception where as the price is increasing, okay, the quantity demanded is also increasing. And these Giffen goods are part of inferior goods. They are not valuable goods. They are not Veblen goods. Okay, so for example, staple foods like potatoes, etc. People are used to eating potato, let's say. Now potato prices are increasing, but still demand for potatoes is also increasing. Now this is an example of Giffen, or you can call it as Giffen's paradox. Okay, so that is about Giffen goods. Okay, inferior good. Okay, inferior good, if I have to draw a graph with respect to inferior good, it will be an exception to the regular law of demand. Exception to regular law of demand means as my income is, let's say, so you will find the graph will be in this fashion. Okay, as my income is increasing, okay, so as my income is increasing, quantity demanded with respect to that product is decreasing. Okay, when my income was at 1, okay, demand was D1. Okay, but as my income increased from 1 to 2, demand decreased from D1 to D2. Now this is an exception for regular law of demand. Regular income graph, this is the regular graph. Now this is the exception of the regular law of demand. So this is basically an example of inferior good. Now this one subset of inferior good is the Giffen good, or we term it as the Giffen's paradox. Yes, and then we have the Veblen good. Okay, so Veblen is basically status oriented. So here also we find an exception. Okay, so as and when the price is increasing, quantity demanded also is increasing here. Okay, so this is an exception to regular law of demand. If you see the regular demand graph, the graph is going to be like this, isn't it? The regular demand graph. If I take price and quantity demanded, the graph, the regular law of demand should be like this. But if you see here, Veblen good graph is an exception. Tomorrow you can ask, Veblen good is an exception to regular law of demand. So no confusion. Yes, Veblen goods or the status oriented goods are an exception to the regular law of demand. Okay, so this is substitute basically, cross demand curves basically, tea to coffee. These are part of microeconomics. I don't think they'll ask these questions, but you know, what you call it as, you know, just these graphs, I don't think they'll ask, but at least these goods and all you should be knowing. Okay, so go to the question now. Shabash. Good, good. Okay, go to 6th question. Question number 6. We need to be fast. We discussed already. Okay, so deflation, general fall in level of prices, disinflation, reduction in rate of inflation, stagflation, same, reflation is also that. From deflation, after deflationary, you remember the graph which I have drawn. Okay, so after the deflationary pressure, you have the reflation here. Okay, so that is what you should see here. Okay, that is what you should see. Okay, so reflation, attempt to rise the prices to counteract the deflationary price. Deflation, counteract the deflation. Okay, good. Okay, now. Okay, yes. So I will not discuss all the words here. One thing which you'll remember is inflation tax. Inflation tax is something like, because the prices are increasing, okay, inflation is acting like a tax, indirectly reducing your, what will a tax do? Tax will reduce your purchasing power. Okay, so similarly, inflation tax means inflation is reducing your purchasing power, wherein inflation is acting like a tax. Okay, similarly, we have inflationary spiral. Inflationary spiral means wages and prices. What means when wages, okay, and prices. So when inflationary spiral is this, as the prices, expectation of prices increasing, now they'll ask for wages to increase. Okay, so continuously this is increasing this, then when this is increasing, then again prices will increase because demand is increasing. So this is a spiral. So when I'm using the word inflationary spiral, okay, so this is basically related to wages and prices. Okay, so okay, so then comes in different types of inflation. In that, first of all, let us try to, one second. Okay, so one is we have something like different inflation based on rate of rise in prices. So rate of rise in prices, one is we have creeping inflation, decent, good. So one is we have creeping inflation. So it is basically, creeping inflation is basically less than 3%. It's like a creeper, it is good, okay, safe. This creeping inflation is essential for GDP growth. It is essential, we need this for GDP growth, that is something. Then we have walking or throttling inflation, walking or throttling, okay. So walking or throttling inflation, okay. So this is a moderate rate, around 3 to 7% rate, moderate rate, okay, but it is less than 10%. Okay, this is basically called walking. Okay, so that means once this throttling inflation rate we are going to cross, then inflation goes negative. So up to throttling inflation, it's okay. Okay, then we have the running inflation. Okay, so we use the word running here. So running also is dangerous in the sense like around 20 to 20%, around 10 to 20% rate. So it's running of a horse. Okay, so it is going to go against the economy, or it adversely affects the economy, adverse effect on economy. Then we have this hyperinflation. Somebody was using this word yesterday. Okay, hyper or runaway, hyper or runaway, hyper or runaway inflation. No, hyper or runaway inflation. Okay, so around it will go, it is 20 to 100, very dangerous kind of inflation. Okay, so it can lead to collapse of monetary system, hyperinflation, collapse of monetary system. Okay, why? Because continuous fall with respect to purchasing power. Continuous fall with respect to purchasing power. Okay, so then based on different inflations based on causes. Okay, so different inflation based on causes. One is we have the demand pull inflation. Okay, so we have demand pull inflation. Yeah, Zimbabwean crisis, yes. Okay, so demand pull inflation is, that means what? It is basically, it is, inflation is mainly because of demand. Okay, so because higher demand for goods and services over the available supply. Okay, so whenever there is overheating of economy, overheating, so I'm using this word, overheating means economy is growing at a faster pace, okay, and there is more of consumption, there's more demand, resources are utilized at a faster pace. So there is a mismatch between demand and supply. So there will be a gap between supply and demand. There will be a gap between supply and demand. Okay, so maybe changes with respect to people's tastes and preferences, purchasing power, increase in money supply. So all this can create this demand. Okay, and if there are production lags also, when there's increase in money supply and production lag, it can lead to demand pull inflation. Okay, so that is one. Then we have this cost push inflation. Okay, there can be a question in these also. So cost push inflation, basically increased input cost. Input cost can be something like increased input cost can be increase in raw material cost, increase in wages. The companies want higher profit margins. The companies want higher, they want higher profit margins, etc. All this will lead to cost push inflation. Okay, so now let's see, this is one. So now before solving there are some questions on this. Okay, so for example, what are the factors that can affect demand pull inflation? So one is we have increase in money supply. So increase in money supply can lead to demand pull inflation. So why? Because I need not explain it. There's too much of money will be chasing too few goods. Okay, two, increase in disposable incomes. Increase in disposable income, more incomes are there. Okay, then if government is following or RBI is following something like the cheap monetary policy, or I can use the word called expansionary monetary policy. Expansionary monetary policy, more money supply, repo rates are less, etc. Government is following fiscal stimulus, government is increasing its public expenditure, etc. Or government is repaying its debt. So government has already taken loans from public, now it is repaying its debt now. So when it's repaying its debt now, people have more money in hand for spending, so money supply is going to be high. So like this, there are factors which will affect. Okay, so similarly, there can be factors that affect the supply. Supply also can get affected. Okay, supply can get affected. So for example, there is shortage with respect to factors of production, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. So shortage with respect to factors of production can also create a problem. Okay, then we have something like industrial disputes, issues can be there. Okay, we can have issues related to hoarding. Hoarding can be there, speculative trading can be there. Okay, all these can be causes, natural calamities, etc. So like this, it can lead to. So go now and go to the question. I think you can solve the questions. Okay, so or you can have, if government is increasing its exports, or if there are more exports and you don't have the supply properly in the country, so sudden increase with respect to exports. So that is the reason government comes up with stock limits at times, so that you need not export over a particular limit. And at the same time, there can be some international factors also that can affect. Oil prices increase, all this international factor like this, many factors can affect. Less substitutes, yes. So oil price hike can be there, shortage, OPEC countries not producing oil, etc. Okay, so like this, there can be different. Okay, so always remember, whenever there is this inflationary effect, so there are these questions that they ask. Okay, so when we observe, whenever what are the effects? If we see effects, if you see, there can be redistribution of income and wealth. For example, one is debtors versus creditors. If you see debtors and creditors, who is going to benefit? So money is going to move from creditors to debtors. Okay, that means debtors will benefit, creditors are going to lose because of inflation. Then we have producers and consumers, if you know. So here consumers are going to lose and money is going to move from consumers to producers. Money is going to move from consumers. Similarly, those people who have flexible income and those who have standard income. Okay, so here who is going to benefit? Obviously flexible income means those incomes which are linked to inflation. Okay, so when we talk about debenture holders or bond holders, So debenture holders or bond holders are also creditors only. So they are also going to lose out in the market. Okay, that is the reason you have inflation index bonds as was an alternative kind of thing. Okay, so then it can have effect, inflation can affect exchange rates also. Okay, and other important aspects. Okay, so other important aspect can, that means even elections results, etc., all that. So political aspects also. So this is some background of the different types, etc., etc. Okay, so now causes of inflation, you have, cost push, demand pull. Okay, you have structural shocks in the system, inefficiencies. Okay, so dependency on imports, globalization, all that. Okay, RBI's role with respect to handling demand pull inflation is more. RBI's role with respect to handling demand pull inflation is more. Okay, so now it can have an effect. Purchasing powers can go down, savings are impacted. Okay, credit decreases, exports, high cost of production, so we lose our competitiveness in the export market, and even currency value depreciates because inflation increases, exports get affected. Okay, so therefore over a period currency value also depreciates. Okay, inflation acts like a tax. Okay, and it affects lenders, that is creditors, etc., bond holders. This is up. Okay, so this is something which you should be knowing. Okay, so this walking, throttling, hyperinflation. Okay, so you all know this is the graph there. Okay, so we can't be slow here, we need to be fast. Okay, so hyper, creeping, walking, running, and hyper. Okay, so no confusion there. Okay, then CPI, WPI, anyhow I've discussed completely, so you not later on you can check. Okay, now talking about core inflation. Okay, so headline inflation is that inflation which takes into consideration, headline inflation is that inflation which takes into consideration everything, including volatile aspects like oil and food. Headline inflation takes into consideration even volatile aspects like oil and food. Core inflation is going to exclude oil and food. Core inflation is going to exclude oil and food. Okay, so that is something which you should remember, and it is important. Okay, these are some measures taken by government. Okay, so inflation targeting, minimum export price, Okay, so government is going to fix the minimum export price so that exports are going to reduce. Okay, releasing buffer stocks, yes. Coming up with price stabilization fund. Okay, so and against hoarding and black marketing, etc., government has taken some measures. All this was done to handle inflation basically. Okay, all this was done to handle inflation. And this is the Phillips curve, which we have already discussed, and you know what it is. Inverse relationship. Okay, that's it. In your previous questions, everything is included here. Now go ahead with solving the question. Question number 7. Headline inflation excludes items, wrong. May not give an accurate picture of how an economy is as it includes. Okay, so it is reverse basically. So you should know what is core and what is headline. Okay, so therefore answer should be neither 1 nor 2. Go to the 8th question. Question number 8. Okay, so this will lead to demand pull inflation. So this can't be there as part of cost push. Increase in corporate tax, costs will increase. Okay, erratic rainfall, it will lead to increase in costs. Okay, so increase in toll, that's also increasing transportation cost. So here cost push inflation 1, 3 and 4, high standard of living, purchasing power is high, demand is increased. So that will lead to demand pull inflation. So 2 should not be part of the answer here. Okay, so that's it. Kalyani has written something incorrect. I didn't get you. So incorrect. Okay, so is that clear? D is clear, no? So this is okay, no? Previous question. This previous question is okay, everybody, right? Okay, go to the 9th question. So you have to handle deflation. Okay, so fiscal stimulus. Fiscal stimulus. You have to pump money. So decreasing tax rate and increasing revenue expenditure. Yesterday we were talking about counter-cyclical policy. So here government has to follow counter-cyclical policy. Okay. Go to the 10th question. Inflation plus unemployment, stagflation. Okay, so that's it. Go to the 11th question. So here one is festive season, demand increases. So 5 should not be there in the answer. Okay, and remember 1 and 3 is pakka. Okay, so you will get a doubt, what is this, whether I should put 2 or not. Increased demand means demand pull inflation. No, it is increased demand for labor. So increased demand of labor means labor cost will increase. That is the intention, hidden intention. That is why always options have to be checked first. Okay, which one should not be there, that has to be removed first, and then get back to your solving. Seventh question was asking for incorrect option. Okay, I think I have not read it properly. Okay, I'm sorry then. Okay, so it should be 1 and 2. Seventh question, incorrect. Both are incorrect. Okay, so it should not be D. It should be C. Okay, seventh question. Okay, I have not read it properly, but you should read it very properly in the exam hall. Silly mistakes. No, I have done it here. Okay, so now go to question number. So elimination basically. So eliminate 5 and then get back and then see. So if you have a doubt, probably you will get a doubt in the exam hall with respect to this second statement. Now you don't have 1, 3, 4, so no tension only. So answer should be 1, 2, 3, 4, that is easy here. And here second statement, increasing demand for labor means increased demand for labor means it's basically labor costs are going to increase. It's going to push labor costs. Okay, so that is how you go ahead with answer 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now there is this concept with respect to something called a sacrifice ratio. It's not there in your regular books. Okay, so what is the sacrifice ratio is? It is the, see on the slide you can see I've written something there. It is a cumulative percentage loss of GDP to the reduction in inflation. Okay, so sacrifice ratio means, what is the sacrifice ratio? It measures the loss, percentage loss of GDP to the reduction in inflation. We are comparing the loss of GDP to the reduction in inflation. That is what is sacrifice ratio. So here if you see loss of level of output, okay, loss of level of output to every percentage fall in the rate of inflation. This is what is sacrifice ratio. Okay, so here that means, for example, if I say over a period of 3 years, now if you see the output has reduced from something like 10% to 5%. Okay, or let's say cost of output. Okay, so overall the level of output has reduced 3 years is something like 10 to 8, then 8 to 7. So the total loss is around 10 plus 8 plus 7. Okay, so total percentage is something like 25%. Okay, so but inflation over a period of 3 years has reduced from 10 to 5%. Inflation has reduced from 10% to 5%. Okay, so that means sacrifice ratio is something like total loss with respect to output. Okay, so if you see here, it is the loss of level of output over this 3 years. The loss of level of output is 25 to every percentage fall in the rate of inflation. So in this 3 years, the percentage fall in the rate of inflation is 5%. So sacrifice ratio, that means the output loss, the total output loss is 25% in 3 years, and the inflation rate reduction in a period of 3 years is 5. So the sacrifice ratio becomes 5:1. 5:1. So here UPSC generally 90%, he may not ask deep questions with respect to sacrifice ratio. But what UPSC may ask here in this case is, okay, what does sacrifice ratio look into? So it looks into the level of loss in the level of output to every percentage fall in the rate of inflation. Loss of level of output to every percentage fall in the rate of inflation. So loss of level of output to every percentage fall in the rate of inflation. So here this sacrifice ratio becomes 5:1. So this is something which you will remember. I don't think it is there in your this book. Okay, so regular reading you will not come across this. Okay, so it is going to measure a cumulative percentage loss of GDP. How much GDP is going down or the output is going down to the reduction in inflation, That is what sacrifice ratio is going to measure. Okay, so 12th question. It measures the proportionate reduction in growth rate due to reduction in inflation. That is what is sacrifice ratio. Okay, yes, good. Okay, so go to 13th question now. Question number 13. Easy only, previous question. Headline. Headline means basically used for policy making. Headlines. You are using that inflation for policy making. Yeah. 14th question. Okay, so you're putting in stock limit, okay, so that you don't export. Stock limit is there. Number one. Number two, you're restricting exports by increasing export duty, and you're increasing the allocation to price stabilization fund. All the three are doing, okay, to reduce the food inflation. Okay, so all three to reduce food inflation. Okay, then go to the 15th question, the term inflationary gap. The term inflationary gap. From the options itself, you can mark the answer. Multiple answers you are giving. From the choices, you try. I wanted to show you some. Okay, so I'll explain. Okay, so here, so there is this concept called, let me explain. Let me explain. So there is a concept called, first thing you should know, what is full employment level. Okay, so full employment level is an economic situation in which all the resources are utilized, fully utilized. All economic resources are fully utilized. So there is no scope for improvement in the economy. So that means what? The economy is operating at its full potential. That means here the level of unemployment will be minimum. Okay, and we will find that whatever the firms are producing at this level is getting sold, and there are no shortages in the economy. So this is what is basically, you call it as full employment level. Okay, so then everybody has understood what is full employment level, first thing. And then next what you should understand is this inflationary gap. So this is a situation which arises when the total aggregate demand, you have the total aggregate demand in an economy exceeds the aggregate supply. Total aggregate demand in an economy exceeds the total aggregate supply, okay, at the full employment level. At full employment level. At the full employment level. Aggregate demand is exceeding the aggregate supply at the full employment level. That is what is what you can call it as inflationary gap. Okay, so what happens here? Let's say the economy is in full potential. That means you have the economy, we don't have time, I'll be a little fast. Okay, so economy at full potential. Okay, so full potential. Now we have the economy at full potential. Okay. Okay, so that means here what is happening? Government is also pumping money, or let's say government is also following something like expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, expansionary government is pumping Okay, so that means here economy is at full level means we cannot increase the supply of goods also, the diagram. Okay, so we cannot increase. Okay, so we cannot increase. So with an increase, that means with we cannot increase something like the supply of goods in the economy. So we cannot increase the supply of goods in the economy. Graph for inflationary gap is not needed. First, let's try to understand this. So increase in supply of goods cannot be done. Why it cannot be done? Because the economy is already operating at the highest level. Okay, so now what will happen? Government is increasing expenditure and economy is operating at its full level. So automatically what will happen? Aggregate demand will increase. Okay, but at the same time, this increase in aggregate demand, but there is no increase with respect to aggregate supply. So aggregate demand is increasing, but you are not in a position to increase aggregate supply. Okay, so this gap is going to lead to inflationary gap. So we have discussed this graph already indirectly. Okay, so I'll show you. So inflationary gap is going to occur and this is going to lead to inflation. This is going to lead to inflation. Okay, so if you see this graph, okay, here, so this is the supply graph and you have the demand graph here. Okay, so demand more than supply in this case, demand more than supply, aggregate demand is more than supply. Okay, so at this point, generally prices have to be stabilized. This is the equilibrium point, but generally if you are not reaching the equilibrium point, prices are not stabilizing and economy is operating at the highest potential and demand is more than the supply, then automatically it will lead to an inflationary trend. Okay, so don't worry about the graph now. So this is what is, so here mainly you will observe that the inflation is basically demand pull. Okay, and it is caused by aggregate demand for goods, prices, and there is no supply. Similarly, you should be knowing something called as the deflationary gap. Okay, here what will happen? Aggregate demand falls short of aggregate supply. Aggregate demand falls short of aggregate supply at the full employment level. Aggregate demand falls short of aggregate supply at the full employment level. Okay, so that means what? This shortfall in total spending of government. Okay, so shortfall in total spending of government, it can also lead to fiscal surplus. Okay, so you're trying, what will happen here? You're producing more than the demand, and the economy heads to a slowdown. So this is what happens. Okay, similarly, you have, this is one more word, deflationary gap. And you should also know there is something called as inflationary premium. Tomorrow if he is asking this word also. So inflationary premium. Okay, so this is one more word. Inflationary tax, you know. So inflationary premium means it is a bonus which is brought by inflation to the borrowers. Bonus brought by inflation to the borrowers. Remember, borrower is there, lender is there. Now this premium, it is a bonus which is coming. So for example, banks are charging nominal rate on lending. Okay, and banks do not take inflationary rate into account. Okay, but the real interest rate, okay, here paid by the borrower, here real interest rate, whatever borrower is getting is less. Okay, so here the bonus which the bank, here in this case, bank is going to give loan. Okay, bank is charging nominal interest rate. Okay, and without taking inflation rate into consideration, suppose if inflation rate is going to increase, okay, the real interest rate paid by the borrower will always be lower than the nominal interest. Real interest rate paid by the borrower will always be lower than the nominal interest. Okay, so therefore, this gap between that real interest and nominal interest is nothing but the inflationary premium. So here, who is benefiting from the lender? The premium is going to the borrower. This is what is inflationary premium. Okay, so these three words are more than sufficient. Okay, so for UPSC. Now we have discussed enough. Now go to the 15th question. Now answer the 15th question. Now here if you see what is inflationary gap, this will not explain, this will not explain, this will not explain. Okay, so this will explain. So one is you have the full employment on one aspect which is there, and it is difference in the real GDP and the anticipated GDP. So that means here the growth is going at a faster pace than anticipated. Automatically aggregate demand will become more than the aggregate supply when the economy is operating at full employment. So out of the 4 options, indirectly this option explains the inflationary gap. Okay, go to the 16th question. Time. Okay, 16th question fast. Question number 16, done. Okay, no explanation needed, enough we have done. Go to 17. Question number 17. Good. It is not depression. I am not taking depression here because there is no deflationary aspect mentioned, number 1. He is saying lower inflation with low aggregate demand. Labor cuts are there and unemployment rate is increasing steadily. It's a clear indication of recession. So technical definition of recession is negative growth rate continuously for more than 2 quarters. Okay, negative growth rate for 2 quarters and more, negative growth rate. Okay, that is what is recession. And this negative growth rate extends for a very long period, it becomes depression. Okay, now slowdown is fall in the growth rate, but there is growth, there is no negative word here. Okay, so that is the difference here. So this 17th question, if you see, it clearly indicates recession. Go to 18th question, question number 18. Question number 18. Always remember, when you are creating new money, minting new money, that will be the most inflationary in nature. You should not make mistakes for such questions. These are easy questions. Okay, they are easy questions. What is technical recession? There is nothing like technical recession. As a technical definition of recession, if I have to technically define what is recession, it is something like negative growth rate is there continuously for more than 2 quarters. 2 quarters negative GDP growth. Negative GDP growth is going negative. Okay, anyhow, when I am discussing national income, again I will tell you. Okay, so longer periods of recession for a longer period, okay, continuously for a very long period, if you have this negative growth rate, you call it as depression. Okay, call it as depression. Yes, I'll come to that. You have potential GDP also. What is potential GDP? In mains question paper they've asked. So all that I'll discuss in national income. First finish of 29, 30 questions, then national income will start. There I'll explain. Come back, solve the 19th question. Question number 19. Yes. Everybody should answer such questions. Though you know the answer, it's not like you're not answering. Put it in the chat, no, if you know the answer. Yes. Okay, so this is wrong. All need not be. This is demand in the economy is weak and supply is more. Aggregate supply more than aggregate demand. Okay, you will find deflationary effects. Okay, no confusion. Go to 20th question. Quantitative easing So quantitative easing, US followed it. Bond buying program performed by Federal Bank of US. Bond buying program performed by Federal Bank of US to increase economic growth in US. Okay, monetary stimulus was followed by the Federal Bank of US in the format of quantitative easing. Okay, so this word quantitative easing was coined in 2009. Okay, so it is a monetary policy central bank sells. No, it is bond buying. Bond buying. So one is wrong. Wherever one is there, that will be wrong. It is adopted to lower the interest rate and increase the money supply. True. Bond buying. Central bank is buying bonds, giving cash to the banks and financial institutions. They have more money, means interest rates will reduce. It can lead to higher rates of inflation. Yes, money supply is increasing, so it can lead to higher rates of inflation. I think the speed is okay. It's not that you're not able to follow, no? We have to be fast, so that's the only thing. You're okay, right? Okay, fine. So, done. Go to the next question. Inflation tax. Best option, inflation caused by deficit financing. Bridging the deficit through any means, like, okay, you can mint money. Okay, so internal ways of deficit financing, which erodes people's income. Thus, it's something that is eroding people's income, that is acting like a tax. Okay, so question number 22. So it's something like you should use elimination technique for such question. Here a seller's market is created. Okay, so you have three negatives here. Stagflation is negative, depression is negative, recession is negative. It's a previous question basically, CAPF. So three are negative, so only one is positive. So if I have to select one, answer should be the positive one. So this is one way of tackling this question. Okay, another way is seller's market is there. Seller will have a market during positive situation. So seller will have a market during boom. So based on the third option also, I can go to B as the answer. Okay, then coming to the explanation part, the economy heats up. This is called overheating of economy. Economy is running at its full potential. Resources are utilized at a faster pace, consumed at a faster pace. Demand is more than supply, and therefore there is a lag or gap between demand and supply. Okay, there can be shortage of capital and savings because your economy is going at a fast pace. There is more utilization of capital, so therefore there is a shortage of capital and savings, and the sellers will have market here. So that is basically during peak situation where the growth is at the top and you have aggregate demands are more than aggregate supplies. So it's a boom situation. This is a way of knowing a concept and marking it. Okay, so then go to 23. Carefully mark the answer. See, when we're talking about unadjusted GDP, so GDP is not adjusted for inflation, means he is referring to nominal GDP. It is not, so nominal GDP is GDP at current prices. Okay, so unadjusted. So when I'm talking about quantity into price, nominal GDP can increase or decrease if the quantity is increasing, okay, and price is not increasing. Nominal GDP can increase if quantity is constant and price is increasing, current prices. Nominal GDP can increase if both quantity and price both are increasing. Okay, so nominal GDP can increase though quantity, okay, so there's less production, quantity is slightly decreased, but there's very high price. So Modi ji $5 trillion also, that some economists were saying. Okay, so some people like Subramania Swamy was also commenting, So you cannot reach 5 trillion, that means probably you will jump through your prices because you're not increasing your production output, etc. So like that also you can increase. So all the four you can do. So here one thing is, when he's using the word growth of unadjusted GDP, means it is not adjusted to inflation. So he's referring to nominal GDP. That is the understanding you should have. So unadjusted GDP means you're talking about nominal GDP. So nominal GDP quantity into price, it depends on Q as well as P. Okay, go to the next question. Okay, so when we are talking about the differences between these indexes like CPI and GDP deflator, so GDP deflator is more comprehensive than these indexes. Okay, so GDP deflator is nothing but nominal GDP, that is GDP at current prices, divided by real GDP into 100, nominal into real into 100, nominal divided by real. So real GDP is GDP calculated at constant year prices or base year prices. Okay, so you're taking all goods here. In CPI, you're taking some 448 and 460. But we do not take, though GDP deflator is more comprehensive, we do not take GDP deflator for policy making. One reason for not taking GDP deflator for policy making is, first thing is you have lag. So lag is basically, if I want to get the data of Jan inflation, so I will get it in Feb, March, April, May. So May end I will get the data of Jan. So for short term policy making, RBI wants to reduce inflation, it cannot use GDP deflator because lag is there. Second is, GDP definition is the total final value of all goods and services produced within the domestic territory. So that means you're not including the imported goods. So when you're not including the imported goods in GDP deflator, okay, so that means imported items, especially oil and food, are major aspects which affect our inflation. And these aspects like oil and food, which are imported items, you're not going to include them in GDP deflator, but they are included in consumer price index. So because of these two reasons, one is lag, another one is non-inclusion of imported goods. Okay, so because of that, though GDP deflator is more comprehensive, we are not going to take GDP deflator for policy making. Okay, so go to the question. Question number 24. Yes, question number 24. Reverse, yes. Question number 25. Question number 25. So we have discussed the sufficient concept needed. Economy is running at peak potential. No, you can't increase supply, but money supply is increasing. So supply is not increasing, peak potential. Money supply is increasing. Supply is not increasing. Supply of products, production is not increasing. In the short run, it will lead to what? Demand side inflation. Okay. Go to 26. See, always remember, pensioners will be there. They pay fixed pension, means you have a trouble. So 4 should be there in my answer, pakka. Okay, adversely affected 4. And informal sector, you can't go and ask. Okay, so Kamwali, inflation is there, increase my salary means you'll increase. No. So informal sector also there will be trouble. Okay, salary earners with salaries linked to inflation, no tension. Profit earners can shift on consumers. Okay, so therefore answer should be 1 and 4. Very important application there. Okay, so next question, previous question. I think base effect they've asked already before last year, but in a different format. Simple, easy question on base effect was already asked. Question number 27. Yes. So base effect means suppose give me 1 second, not waste your time here. So base effect, I wanted to show you. So here see estimated real GDP 21-22. If you see here, okay, estimated real GDP, you are expecting 11%. Here it was -7.7, -7.7, 2020-21. And now you are saying estimated real GDP is for financial year 21-22 will be 11%. Now this is mainly because of lower base. 2021 inflation was so less, that is called lower base. Okay, that you are expecting that GDP will be more than 10 because of the lower base. Expected that it will get revived and we will jump off. But you have second wave, if you have third wave again, then there is no jumping. Okay, so of course it depends on what's going to happen, but because of the low base which you find here, low base you find there, low base -7, because of that low base you target that. The economic survey targets the real GDP growth to be 11%. This is mainly because of the base effect. You are getting that 11% because not because your GDP is going to become so high, production will increase. No, it is because of the base jump. Okay, so that is base effect. Comparison, that means the previous year's effect or the comparative year's effect may make your inflation or GDP look high or low because of this comparison. So this is what is the effect of the base year on the present year. That is called as base effect. So now mark the answer. Now mark the answer. Others also? Yes. Shabash. Okay. Good. Okay. Now next, solve the next question. Paradox of thrift. So 29th question, I will give you break. That's the end of inflation. Then again we'll have GDP. 5 minutes break I will give. Okay. Now go to 28th question. Paradox of thrift. You have read your NCERT, you will find this paradox of thrift. See, suppose whenever the economy is not doing well, what happens is people tend to save more than invest. So people tend to save more than invest. Ultimately, people earn less, ultimately reducing their savings also over a period of time. Okay, 26, I didn't understand. Okay, I'll explain 26. Give me 1 minute. Okay. 27 is done. 28. Yeah. Paradox of thrift is people, whenever the economy is not doing well, there is something like economy. Suppose, for example, remember pent up demand will be less now. So in newspaper you find this word called pent up demand. Now why they were using this word called pent up, P-E-N-T, pent up demand is basically during the first wave, after the first wave lockdown, pent up demand increased. After the lockdown, when they pushed off the lockdown, suddenly people started consuming more, started spending more. So pent up demand increased. But during the second wave, after the second wave, pent up demand was not so high. People were not consuming. as they consumed after the first lockdown, because there was a fear. Now there is a fear that there can be another wave in spite of there being vaccine. So what will happen? Consumption will drop. When consumption is dropping, automatically GDP will also get affected. So pent up demand is a critical factor to increase. Okay. So what are people doing during that point of time? When the economy there is hesitation, they are tending to save more than invest. So though there is a scope for investment, no, they'll no, why to invest? Now there is a risk. No, I'll save. But ultimately, after a particular period of time, they observe that the overall potential of savings is also less. So they end up saving less with the logic of saving more. They don't invest, they put the money in the bank only, and the interest rates are so less, they end up saving more, they end up saving less than expected with the intention of saving more during a critical situation. That is what is paradox of thrift. So answer yes, shabash. Okay, so don't get confused. All other options are traps there. Trap. Okay, so now I explained this Fisher effect already. Properly mark the answer. The first question I explained Fisher effect. I explained Fisher effect already. Nominal interest. Remember the first question. So please mark the answer. Shabash. Inflation and interest rate. Yes, good. Okay. Now you've not understood 20. See here, which of the following groups are adversely affected by inflation? Okay, so who will get affected? Somebody. So you put money in the bank, inflation is increasing, and you are not in a position to remove your money, you're not investing. Such people will get affected, no, because value of money is going to reduce, no. So that means if you're putting money in the bank, one is pensioners will first get affected, inflation is there, because pensioners live on pension. They will not have investment thoughts also. Pensioners will not have investment thoughts. Okay, so automatically they are going to lose money. Okay, similarly, somebody who is working in informal sector, he cannot ask, they'll not go and say, no, inflation is too high, so please increase my salary. They can't ask. They can't. Their bargaining capacity is less in the informal sector. Okay, so therefore these two are going to lose. Profit earner is not going to lose because he has an option to increase the prices. Okay, so I'm selling a product. No, I'm a profit earner. My cost is increased. So what? I have a choice. People may not buy my product, but I have a choice. My choice is I'll increase the price. Okay, salary earners with salaries linked to inflation, they will benefit because your salaries are linked to inflation. So somebody has a doubt, question number 12 and 13. Okay, so hmm. 12 and 13. Okay. Salary linked to inflation means if inflation is increasing, anyway, I'll forward this sheet to you like yesterday. Okay. Salary linked to inflation means as inflation is increasing, salary is also increasing. That is what is salary linked to inflation. So no problem, no. If you're working for software company, inflation is increasing, they're increasing your salary means you'll not have any problem. Okay, we don't have time. We need to be fast. Okay, so one more chapter is left. Now, okay, so yeah, dearness allowance, yes. Okay, so now, yes, okay, so now coming to national income. See, national income also. Inflation, I'm telling you, I don't know if at all a difficult current affairs if it's going to ask, but what we have done, if you can revise and you do it, I think there's nothing more that is needed. Okay, so national income, we have discussed earlier. Now, while solving questions, first of all, you should be knowing few things here. One is how economic growth is calculated. So how economic growth is calculated, basically we talk about, we use the word called GDP. And then the basic formulas which you should be knowing, that is GDP, GNP, what is the difference? So GNP is nothing but GDP plus net factor income from abroad. So these basic formulae and all you should be knowing. And once these things are clear, then things will be easy. Then the difference between nominal GDP, real GDP and GDP deflator. Nominal, real and GDP deflator. So first, this is an easy question. So solve the 30th question first. Solve question number 30. Yes. Question number 30. I said 5 minutes break, 15 students have gone. 5 minutes break. We'll take 15 minutes break and come back. Okay. Real GDP, see, there's no problem. There is no problem with respect to first statement. So when saying what is nominal, current year quantity into current year price. Real GDP, current year quantity into base year price. So P will be constant. Okay. So real GDP reflects only the changes in quantities. Don't go by only here. I wantedly pushed it. Only the changes in quantities of goods. Yes, because real GDP will only talk about increase in production. P is constant. So that statement is okay. Nominal GDP changes in both prices as well as quantities, both. Yes. 3. GDP deflator reflects only the changes in price. GDP deflator is an indicator of what? GDP deflator will indicate what? Inflation. It only talks about price, nominal by real into 100. Is that clear? Okay. So go to the next question. Go to the next question. Okay. So when we are talking about different methods of calculating GDP, you should be knowing one is the expenditure method of calculation. So expenditure method of calculation, how do we do it? It is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. I am not deriving it in this class. Earlier we derived it also. Okay, so C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay. So what is this C, I and G are all expenditures on domestically produced final goods. So C, I and G are expenditures on domestically produced final goods. Okay. So expenditure by whom? Expenditure by 3 sectors. Okay, expenditure by 3 sectors. So 3 sectors here, what are the 3 sectors you have? What are the 3 sectors? Household, private. Okay, so you have 3 sectors, government. Okay, so this is the expenditure made by the 3 sectors, okay, on domestically produced goods. Domestically produced goods. Okay, so that means C is nothing but the expenditure of household sector. C is nothing but the expenditure of who? Household sector on domestically produced consumption goods. Okay, and similarly when we talk about I, okay, so it will be expenditure by the private sector on something like So it is expenditure made by the private sector. That is what is I. G is expenditure made by the government sector on domestically produced goods. So this should be clear. Okay. So X minus M or NX is nothing but net exports. I am not deriving it here, you should be knowing. So in the circular flow of income which we have drawn earlier, if you could recollect, whichever method we use, whether it is income method, expenditure method or the product method, ultimately the value should be same, leaving errors and omissions. The output will be same. Okay. So when we are talking about income method, so it is nothing but GDP is nothing but the profit earned by all the firms plus interest received by all the capital deployed plus the rent received for internal natural resources plus wages earned by all the laborers. So that is what we discussed. No, so this is basically when we are talking about the income method, this is how we defined it. So it is something like Viper. Okay, wages plus interest plus rent. Okay, interest plus profit plus rent, Viper. Okay. So here I have explained that the terminology has been changed. Okay, so instead of using income, along with income, they started using mixed income. Okay, and we have used something like word called operating surplus, profit and all. Okay, so that word or terminology has got changed, but this is the basic concept. So when we are using the word GDP, using which we are going to measure our economic growth, so this D here is nothing but the domestic territory. Okay. So when I am using this word domestic territory, this domestic territory, I can call it as the economic territory. Economic territory. So when I am defining it, GDP, I say it's the total final value of all goods and services produced within the domestic territory of the country. So when I am using this word domestic territory here, it is the economic territory. So this economic territory is going to be different from the geographical territory. Okay, so when I am using this word domestic territory, it includes political frontiers of the country. It will also include political frontiers of the country, including territorial waters. Territorial waters, 12 nautical miles in geography you would have read. Okay, then we have something like the shipping and aircrafts operated by residents of the country. Okay, ships and aircrafts. It will include operated by the residents of the country between two or more countries. For example, Air India is services between two different countries. So that will also be part of GDP. Then we have the fishing vessels. Okay, fishing vessels, oil and natural gas rigs. Oil and natural gas. You have floating platforms, oil and so suppose Mumbai oil rig is 160 nautical miles away from the shoreline. So it is within the exclusive economic zone. So that is also going to be part of our GDP. Now, if these platforms, these natural gas rigs are operated by the residents of the country, okay, in the international waters, or they are engaged in extraction in areas where the country has exclusive rights, all that is also going to be part of India's GDP. Okay, then we have something like embassies and consulates. So if you know embassies and all, Indian embassy in Pakistan is as good as Indian territory in Pakistan. Okay, so Indian embassy in Japan, Indian embassy in USA is as good as Indian territory in US. So whatever services you are rendering, it will be part of India's GDP. Similarly, we have to exclude US embassy in India or Pakistani embassy in India. Okay, so their military establishments we are going to exclude. This is how we. Okay, so this is how all this is going to be part of that domestic territory when I'm using the word GDP. So no confusion there. And so please go to that question. 31. Question number 31. Yes, go to question number 32. Okay, so now question number 32. Okay. Okay, now question number 32, see here. So first of all, when we are defining GDP, you all should be knowing that, first of all, you should be knowing different types of goods. Okay, so one is we have the intermediate goods. I will not be explaining it in detail, we don't have so much of time. So these are basically the semi-finished goods. Okay, so and they need to go through further production process to be converted into a final good. Such goods are basically, so for example, we have steel sheets. Okay, so these steel sheets you can't use it as it is, and it is something like it needs to be transformed into a final product, maybe something like an automobile, appliances, etc. So, but when you're talking about GDP, you're talking about the final goods. Okay, so final goods, so you don't need any further transformation in the production process. So, in that final goods also, you have two types of goods. Okay, so one is we have something like the consumption goods. No confusion here, consumption goods. Another one is basically we have the capital goods. One is the consumption good, another one is the capital good. So consumption goods are directly consumed, or these are consumed by the ultimate consumer. Okay, so they are going to meet the immediate need of the consumer. Okay, so in this consumption goods also you have durable consumption goods, non-durable consumption goods, and services. Durable consumption goods means their lifespan is generally more than 3 years. For example, you have furniture is there, consumer electronics, these are all durable consumption goods. Then you have non-durable consumer goods, something like you have the food, fuel, paper, clothing, and all that. Then we have the services. Okay, so these are something like education, banking, etc. All these are consumption goods. Then we have in the final goods, we have the capital goods. Okay, so this is basically capital, that means capital goods. Okay, that means it is a produced output that it is created by a man-made process. Okay, so this capital good also acts as an input for further production process, like a machine. Okay, it acts as an input for further production process. Now, when it is acting like an input also, so this one will not get transformed or consumed. So it will not get transformed or consumed. There will be no change with respect to its size, shape, etc. So it will not get transformed nor consumed. But for these capital goods, there will be something called as depreciation. For these capital goods, there will be something called as depreciation. So whenever we are referring to capital goods, you have physical capital, that is basically the capital goods. You also have the intellectual capital, that is money. Or we also have something like, intellectual capital is something like the patents and all. Then we have the financial capital, which is money. Okay, but here remember, when I am referring to investment as such, when I am using the word investment, okay, so when I am using the word investment, it is basically we are referring to something like gross capital formation, GCF, gross capital formation. So whenever there is a, suppose let's say there is a factory, that factory has produced, okay, this factory is worth 1 lakh, okay, and this factory has produced something like consumption good worth 700 and capital goods worth 300. Okay, so the investment in the economy is nothing but 300 out of the total GDP. Total GDP is 1000, 700 plus 300. So the investment in the economy is something like 300 by 1000, or I can say the investment in the economy is 30% here. So that part of the final output, which is comprising of physical capital goods, that part of the final output which is consisting of the physical capital goods is nothing but the gross investment. So when I am using the word gross investment, it means that part of the final output which comprises of physical capital goods is called as gross investment. Okay, so that means investment, according to economists, you are not measuring it as money put into the business or any economic activity, but it is basically that proportion of your final output, that proportion of your GDP which consists of capital goods. That is what is your investment, or we use the word gross investment here, which is 30%. Okay, so that should be clear. So that means in this case, for example, if I have to get something called as net investment. So that means for producing this 300 rupees worth capital good, there is a wear and tear of this factory worth 50 rupees. There is a wear and tear. Okay, so there is a wear and tear. That means there is a wear and tear of 50 rupees for this factory to produce this 300 rupees worth capital good. That means my net investment would be how much? This will be 300 minus 50. So my net investment is equal to 250. This 50 is nothing but depreciation. This 50 is nothing but depreciation. Okay, so this investment which I am talking about, okay, so this investment is nothing but I am referring it to as GCF, or gross capital formation, GCF, which is called as gross. So this will be equal to gross fixed capital formation. So gross fixed capital formation means what? Investment into machinery is there, equipment, machinery plus equipment, you are putting intellectual property, new constructions, intellectual property, all that is gross fixed capital formation. Okay, then you have something like uh, uh, net acquisition of assets or valuables. Net acquisition valuables like gold, silver, etc. They will not ask the formula, just try to understand the concept so that there will not be any problem. Okay, then you have change in inventory, change in stock, or we call it as change in inventory. All this is put together, you call it as GCF. Okay, so if you have to track a graph of investment of the country or gross capital formation, you don't find a proper graph in sense continuously increasing, continuously decreasing, we cannot comment. Okay, so that means these are called as trend based questions. So they can ask trend based questions with respect to GDP growth rate. Already they have asked trend based questions with respect to GDP growth rate, continuously increase, continue. So for example, if I have to track, for example, 2013-14, okay, 2013-14 investment as a percentage of GDP was around 31.3%. 31.3%. From there, in 14-15, it reduced to something like 30%, 30.1%. And then in 15-16, it went down to 28.5. It remained at 28.5, okay, in 16-17, and then it remained at 28.5. Okay, so 13-14, 14-15. So this is 15-16, 16-17, 17-18. So 17-18 also investment as a percentage of GDP is 28.5. Okay, so it went on decreasing, but after 17-18 the trend changed a little. That means you find from 28.5%, okay, 18-19 it went to 29.3, and then again it went down to 27 and 24%. 27 and 24%. Okay, so this is the trend which you find with respect to investment. What is investment is that? So investment is continuously increasing since last 10 years. No. So investment is not continuously increasing. Like such kind of graph based questions they can ask with respect to gross capital formation. Like that they can ask with respect to savings also. Okay, savings as a percentage of GDP, okay, continuously increasing. So that is something which you should know. Okay, so once this is clear, now go to the question. Now we don't have much time now. So go to question number 32. So how do I calculate the depreciation of a particular good? So if I am calculating, suppose you say it's an accounting principle. So the machine is costing 1 lakh rupees and lifespan of the machine is 5 years or let's say 10 years. Okay, so that means 10% of the machine is going to depreciate every year. Okay, 10 years is the lifespan. That means 10% of the machine is going to depreciate every year. So how I will get to know? You will get to know based. That means I need to know the cost of the machine. So it is dependent on the cost. Okay, so depreciation on capital good is dependent on the cost. So unless and until you know the cost, you cannot calculate the depreciation because 10% of the cost of the machine. Okay, and then depreciation for capital good does not take into account destruction of goods in accident. Yes, on a normal process, the lifespan of the machine is 10 years. So if there is tsunami and all, that is not taken into consideration when I am calculating depreciation. So yes, depreciation is dependent. This statement is wrong. Depreciation does not take into account the destruction. This is true. It will not take into consideration abnormal situations. Okay, on a normal course, yes. Clear? So answer for this question should be very good. Okay. Now go to Kuznets curve. Yesterday I explained Kuznets curve, so there should not be any problem for you to mark this question. Okay. So this is what is Kuznets curve. Okay, this is what is Kuznets curve. Okay, so answer. Okay, so go to 35th question. Question number 35. You can mark it very fast. Very good. Okay, go to question number 36. Think properly and mark. Question number 36. Huh? 36. See, first of all, real GDP has increased, means production is increasing year after year. Okay, government is running a budgetary surplus. So how can I say tax yields are low? Now you are getting surplus, means revenues may be coming for you. I cannot comment on this. Now real GDP is increasing. So how can I say very high inflation? First of all, real GDP will only talk about production. It will not comment on inflation first. The government is not spending on infrastructure. I cannot say. Government may be spending and still there may be budgetary surplus. We don't know. Okay, so therefore, you cannot comment on any of these. You cannot directly comment on any of these, and therefore the answer should be D. Okay, go to question number 37. Which goods will lead to double counting? It is intermediate goods, because if you are intermediate goods, if you final goods, that is why. Why? Because it leads to double counting. So it is intermediate goods. Okay, so error of double counting. Now go to question number 38. I think I am not explaining the formula. I hope you know GNP is equal to GDP plus net factor income from abroad, NFIA. Okay, GNP is equal to GDP plus net factor income from abroad, factor income. Okay, so there should not be any doubts there. Okay, so I think it is clear for everybody. Okay, so or wait 1 second. Go. Yeah. You want me to explain that? Is it okay? No need. Okay, okay, good. Okay, so then go to question number 39. Question number 39. Okay, so before you solve question number 39, so if you have to put in, everybody should be knowing what is factor cost, what is factor income. So no question of not knowing these basics. Okay, so GDP plus when I do NFIA, net factor income from abroad, I arrive at GNP. Okay, when I do GDP minus depreciation I am removing, I arrive at NDP, net domestic product. GNP minus depreciation is nothing but NNP. Okay, now this gross national product is also called as gross national income. Okay, and net national product we also call it as net national income. Okay, so then that is net national income. So net national income is nothing but NNP, net national product at factor cost, NNP at factor cost. Okay, so always remember market price is equal to factor cost plus indirect tax. Okay, so if I have to get GDP at market price is equal to GDP at factor cost plus indirect taxes minus subsidy. Okay, so this indirect tax minus subsidy, I can also call it as net indirect tax. Okay, fine. Now, go to question number 39. Depreciation is less, means the economy can be technologically advanced. Economy can be technologically advanced. Next question, previous question, this is UPSC question, 40. Question number 40. 40, 41, both are previous questions only. Simple questions only, basics. Answer question number 40. See, poverty, part of inclusive growth, employment, yes, gender also yes, not capital market. Not capital market. So, answer should be C. Answer should be C. Okay. Then, another basic, open economy, closed economy. In our first class, we discussed what is the difference between open and closed. So, previous question, what should be the answer? Question number 41. See, in UPSC, such questions will be asked. That is why confidently you have to go to the exam. Okay, economy easy in UPSC main exam. That is in not the mock. I am talking about the main UPSC exam. Prelims, economy will be simple only. Neither export nor import. Neither export nor import. Okay, closed economy. Okay, now this is a CAPF question. Now, one of the reasons for India's occupational structure remaining more or less the same over the years. Now, this use some trick you will use. Okay, so use and go to 42, try 42nd question. It's a tricky question basically. So try jumbling it and use your common sense or whatever you call it as logic and then get to the answer. 42, question number 42. Rohan, ceiling on land holding have enabled more people to own land and hence their preference to stay with agriculture. No, just because you have land, you are staying with agriculture. I don't think so. Okay, so people are largely unaware of the significance of transition. No, they are aware. People are aware. People know. People are coming to cities. They know that there is productivity in agriculture has been high enough. This is illogical. Okay, you know how productive our agriculture is, you know. Okay, so therefore people are staying. So no, farming is the riskiest business done by the poorest man on earth. So second cannot be the answer. So investment pattern, you could not create proper jobs in the manufacturing. More capital intensive, second 5-year plan plus. So more jobs are not created in the secondary sector. So people had to stay back with agriculture. Okay, so like that. So whenever you get a difficult question, so you have to wait, look into the options, search for the answer. So it's prelims is searching for the options. You are searching the right option. Remember, you need not recollect it completely. Okay, so that skill you should develop. Okay, go to question number 43. So in investment models, we would have read something like, okay, economic growth of a country is directly proportional to savings and inversely proportional to capital output ratio. So, economic growth of a country or GDP is directly proportional to savings and inversely proportional to capital output ratio. Inversely proportional to capital output ratio. So, capital output ratio is the ratio of capital to output. Capital to output, that means how much capital is required per unit of output. How much capital is required per unit of output. That means what? If more capital is required per unit of output, that means the capital is less effective. Okay, if more capital is needed, so that means what? Higher capital. That means what? If suppose capital output ratio is 3:1. Okay, it means, okay, so that means what? 1 unit of output is produced using 3 units of capital. 1 unit of output is produced using 3 units of capital. Now suppose if capital output ratio is 5:1, it means 1 unit of output is produced by using 5 units of capital. So if the capital output ratio is less, it means you are more efficient, a country is more efficient. Okay, so capital output ratios less means country is more efficient because you are requiring less capital to produce a single unit of output. Developed countries capital output ratios are less, efficiency is more. Developed countries capital output ratios are less. That means developed countries, countries like India, developing countries capital output ratios are more inefficient. Okay, so now go to question number 43 and mark the answer. Inefficiency. Okay. Question number 44. National income NNP at factor cost. Okay. Go to question number 45. Done. Question number 45. Previous question, 45. Go to question number 46. Don't make mistakes. If you know the formula, you can get to the answer. So the question is saying, 46 question, it's saying national income. So that means I have to measure what? NNP at factor cost. I have to arrive at NNP at factor cost. This is what it is asking. Okay. So NNP at factor cost, if you see, GNP at market prices minus depreciation. Okay. Minus depreciation minus indirect taxes plus subsidy. Okay, this is okay. So that means first thing is gross versus net. Okay. So here if you see GNP at market prices, okay, minus indirect taxes plus subsidy. Okay. So that will be something like you will have, what will you get from that? You will get what? GNP at factor cost. Okay. So GNP at factor cost. Okay. So when we are talking about gross versus net, so gross versus net, GNP minus depreciation. So that is NNP at factor cost, which is nothing but national income. From the formula straight, so you will get to the answer. That is the third one. You please practice this. Simple only, same formulas you put there, you will get to the answer. Okay. Yes. 47, we have discussed now previous question. Economic growth will increase necessarily have to occur. If there is investment, if there is capital formation. Yes. It's a previous question. It's not about population, not about technological, not about trade. Why? More capital goods means in future more output, more GDP. Simple logic. That is what is your I increasing or gross capital formation. Okay. So next question number 48. So we have discussed purchasing power, export competitiveness. You will get to know of a country based on real exchange rates. BOP I will again discuss. So it takes some time here. So we have nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate, PPP exchange rate. You have NEAR and REAR. NEAR is nominal effective exchange rate. REAR is real effective exchange rate. In the BOP class I will discuss, but which one will indicate the export competitiveness of a country? It is real exchange rate, or it should be REAR, okay, to be very specific. Okay, so that you should be knowing that. Okay, so then India's case, when we are talking about purchasing power parity exchange rate, what I mean by PPP, a basket of goods, okay, so are costing $1 in US. A similar basket of goods are costing somewhere around 30 rupees. Okay, so this is how PPP exchange rate is what we use for measuring poverty also, because it talks about the purchasing power. So it clearly says $1 is equal to 30. Okay, so a basket of goods, you're able to get it for 30 rupees. Now the same basket of goods, say basket of goods you're getting for $1, the same basket of goods you're getting 30, it means $1 is equal to 30 rupees, rather than the official exchange rate or the nominal exchange rate, maybe $1 is equal to 70. So in detail, half an hour, 45 minutes, I would have discussed earlier, saying how, what will happen, REAR greater than 1, etc. I'll try if time permits in BOP class. Now first try to answer this question number 48. Okay, so the exchange, good. The exchange rates between two nations adjust to reflect differences in price levels in the two countries. Very good, Shabash. You're doing well. Okay, so now go to question number 49. So in the national income calculation, actually when the farmer is producing wheat for his own consumption, it will be included actually. But here it will be included if you are based on the method which you are using. If you are using product method, so it will be included in the calculation. But here, based on the options, you go ahead. So here if you see, first of all, understand that old goods will not be included because it is already, suppose there's a Maruti car 800 which I purchased in 2002, already it is included in that year's GDP. So it will not be included in the present GDP. Okay, so that is one. Capital gain will not be included. Similarly, transfer payments are not part of national income because they are only transfer. There's no good nor service that is created. That is what is transfer payment. So transfer payment are not part of national income calculation. Remember, transfer payments are going to be part of your personal income, but transfer payment will not be part of national income. They will be part of personal income. So only option you can go ahead here. Black money is not calculated, so it will not be included. Okay, so that's how you have to remember. Okay, so go to question number 50. Question number 50. Think and mark the answer. Rohan, come on. Why this deduction at source? It looks so fantastic. Award. Okay, measure of a worker's real wage. Real wage is always about the purchasing power. Okay, it's about the purchasing power of the earning. Okay, so previous question, this is previous year's question. Okay, so don't make mistakes. A simple question. So always remember, though inflation is there, if inflation is there, your wage is increasing. That doesn't mean your wage is really increasing. Your real wage is something which will decide the purchasing power. Okay. Go to the next question, 51. Yes. Discussed? Yes. Go to question number 52. Now, main causes of slow rate of growth of per capita income. slow rate of growth of per capita income. Any concept I have missed? Let me check. So try marking this. Slow rate of growth of so you know the difference between nominal and real, we have discussed. Okay, total national income by population. Okay, you know what is per capita income. Okay, so now this question, what should be? One is population is increasing. Okay, so this will create problem. Okay, high rate of growth of population. Okay, then this is a positive thing, high rate of capital formation. Okay, now you have high capital output ratio. Okay, slow growth, high capital output ratio and high rate of growth of population. It can't be 1, 2 and 4 because you cannot come up with a direct link with respect to fiscal deficit also. And therefore, answer should be 1, 2 and 4. Go to 53. We compare GDPs of countries. We do not compare NDPs, net domestic product of countries. We compare GDPs of countries. Okay, so why? Because the depreciation levels in different countries which we set are different for goods, and that is the reason you cannot take NDP as a factor for comparison, remember. Okay, so we take GDP and not NDP because the depreciation levels set by different economies for goods are going to be different. It need not be same. It changes, it varies. Okay, so go to question number 54. Question number 54. Yes, very good. So here all the industries were kept under compulsory licensing. State governments did not have right to monopoly. No, India decided to be a state-led economy. That's okay. Mixed economy basically. But yes, but one only you don't have. So none of these. Now go to question number 55. If you know the definition of factor payments, you should be marking the answer. Payments made for factors of production, land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. No confusion, read the options properly. Shabash. Overheating of economy, discussed. It's raining. Yes. Economy overheats means there is more demand and there is lag between demand and supply. Okay. So that is what is overheating. Give me 5 more minutes. That's all. Very good. So we were able to. Okay. So One is there can be economic survey question asking V-shaped economy, K-shaped economy. What is K-shape? What is V-shape economy? You should know. Okay, so this is we yesterday we talked about. Okay, so this forex reserve you can see during period Corona period also $586 billion. It can almost cover 18 months of import. Okay, so if you see V-shape, yesterday I showed you C plus I plus G plus X minus M with respect to all the factors in the economic survey, we could see a V-shaped recovery. Okay, so this is what is V-shape. Okay, K-shape, we have discussed yesterday. Okay, so V-shaped and K-shaped. So there can be some small question if they want to ask. Okay, it is there. You should be knowing it. Okay, and then okay, that's all for mains. Okay, so growth. What is growth rates? You can see minus 23.9. And if you see sectors impacted, contact-based services, manufacturing and construction. So agriculture was like a silver lining. Agriculture acted as a cushion to absorb our COVID-19 shock. So that was something, okay, so which is correct. Okay, agriculture act like a silver lining. I'll send the question paper, give me 1 minute. I'll right away push it. Okay, so COVID-19 stringent lockdown to save lives chosen over livelihood, economy, both supply and demand disrupted. So this was the diagram which was given, okay, in the economic survey. That's it.